chances play, although I take the point that, sometimes the quality will vary depending on what approach different teams take to it, because obviously different sides will approach it in different ways. Some will want to go out and win it, and others will want to bed their senior pros, keep the senior pros out of the way a little bit because they've got trial games and things like that to get themselves ready. This isn't the only opportunity these
lads. It lacks intensity, and maybe it's
reason.
Lacking intensity more now than it did even at the start. Maybe that's what Bernard's not feeling because of that. Whereas I always expected it to lack intensity, so maybe I didn't have the same expectations, but maybe that's where we're coming at different angles.
I don't know if they played this time round, but I'll tell you one part of the Nines that doesn't lack intensity is when the Gillaroos play the Silver Ferns.
Yeah, they did.
Did they play again this time around?
Well, Australia were pretty dominant this time around.
Right, okay.
The Kiwis were mistake-ridden and looked a lot slower across the board, on average.
Okay.
Than the Australians did. So it wasn't quite the spectacle it was the last couple of years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Final piece of feedback then came in from Gary Ormiston. What does Mr. Ormiston have to say for himself?
He says, "Hi guys, there have been some appalling attendances this weekend for what is the opening round of Super League when crowds should be flocking back to grounds. He does admit though it's not helped by only having one in inverted commas big club at home. So this prompted me to have a look myself and write a blog.
Excellent.
Which has quickly become the second most viewed blog post
it's come out well,
the Super League pod's ever done, and it's only been up little over 24 hours at the time of recording.
It's going to fly to the top of the charts, isn't it?
Yeah, the headline numbers are pretty bad. Depending on, I've seen a couple of the crowd figures. I've seen two different numbers for. Although the numbers I've used have been the lower number because they were the ones I saw first, basically. But you're looking at around about 8,000 average attendance, which is the worst attended opening round of fixtures on average per game since the 2003 season.
Right.
Which it sounds bad, doesn't it?
It does.
When you look into it a bit deeper, if you want to see the blog, it's at superleaguepod.blogspot.co.uk. It's up there. I also did another one this week that I didn't publicise at all. I just put it up there because it was like an angst I was feeling at the time. So I wanted to write it, get it out, get it done.
Right.
But I don't know how strongly I feel about the piece now. So I just left it to sit there. That's about how I'd organise the leadership of the sport, I suppose, in the UK and Europe. So that one's on there as well if you want to see. But this one about attendances is really well read. If you look at the 6 games that actually took place, obviously Castleford against Leeds doesn't have a corresponding regular season equivalent last year. But of the other 5 games, 4 of them had a higher attendance in this round than the equivalent fixture between the two sides last season in the regular season. The one that didn't was Catalan against Warrington, which was, I think, 17 or 19, less than 20 people less in attendance.
Okay.
So it's basically the same size crowd.
Yeah.
And then if you look at the average round 1 fixture for whenever these teams have hosted round 1s, the only ones that came back below their averages were Catalan and Widnes. But with Catalan, they've only ever hosted 2 round 1 fixtures before in their 10 years in Super League, and one of them was obviously their first ever game, so that had a big attendance, which skewed the average slightly, I would suggest, although the other one had a really low attendance, which similarly did the same thing. So you can't really regard their number that strongly, but looking at their averages for 2016, again, only Widnes and Catalan's figures for this game, round 1 game, fell below their 2016 home attendances across the whole league season, so regular season Super 8s. So actually, in context, it wasn't that bad at all. It was just the scheduling was a bit weird in terms of the best 4 attended sides last year, Leeds, Wigan, Hull FC and Warrington, were all away from home. Whereas if you look last year when the average was over 11,000 for the opening round, the top 4 attended sides from the year before that were Leeds, Wigan, Hull FC and St Helens, who were all at home.
So there you go. So that's so that makes up for it, doesn't it?
But it was an interesting point, and I think the knee-jerk reaction of appalling. I think Gary's seen the the context now, but still I'd want more people in every...
We always do.
All the time.
We would always do. Okay, well, thank you everyone who got in touch for the feedback and shout-outs. Let's take a look now at news from around the world of rugby league. So, to the news then from around the world of rugby league, and we'll start, Mark. Well, there's only one place we can really start this week, and it is in the south of France with the Catalan Dragons, where fullback Tony Gigot has been suspended by the French anti-doping department for 2 years, despite producing a negative test result. The French side have been notified that the fullback has been suspended following what is termed an inappropriate exchange with the representative from the French Federation's anti-doping department. The test took place while Gigot was on France's training camp at La Basse-Sarraz on the 5th of October last year. It's alleged that Gigot was involved in an incident. However, the Dragons claim that several witnesses were able to confirm Gigot had apparently acted appropriately. The club has confirmed that it will appeal the decision, with CEO Christophe Jouffret saying, "We are stunned by the sanction for a controlled player whose results are negative. We will do our best to support our player and to help him to come back in the team as soon as possible." Marc Pelonc, the president of the French Rugby League Federation, has expressed surprise at the suspension. "In my capacity as president of French Rugby League, I have been informed of the decision taken by the Doping Disciplinary Committee against some players, and I have taken note of them. I would like to remind you that the members of the Disciplinary Commission of the FFR 13 are independent and cannot receive instructions. Since they have been made public, these sanctions have provoked strong reactions. I understand the emotion of it all, and I am personally amazed by the severity of the sanctions. However, it seems clear to me that in view of the seriousness of the sanctions, the players concerned will appeal." And we did have a tweet in on this one. Chris McKeown simply asked, "With the news on Tony Gigot, has anybody checked on Alan Walker?" No more leg of lamb. No more leg of lamb. Yeah, we've not had a tweet of the week for a while, but I think that would probably go some way to winning it. I don't know a great deal more than probably you or anyone else really about this.
The suggestions are that he offered to bribe the doping official to not carry out the test, but
do you think he was just having a joke?
The test was negative,
exactly.
So, maybe it was more like he couldn't be bothered waiting around after the game. It's his last game of the year. They're probably all going to go out on the lash. You don't want to be sat around for a couple of hours waiting for you. You know, because sometimes these players, they can't...
No, I'm sorry, I don't feel any sympathy for that. I don't feel any sympathy
for that. I'm not saying you do, sympathetic. I'm saying that might be the scenario where he just thought, I can't be arsed. Let's have a bit of a back and forth sort of situation. Yeah. And the comments from Pelonc suggest there's other players involved, but I haven't read about it.
No, it's been suspiciously quiet on that.
But obviously it could be players who play in France, who play in their division, and we weren't aware of it. It's awful timing for the Dragons, coming 2 days before the start of the season, at a point where they couldn't sign anyone
as a replacement.
They couldn't plan for this or budget for this. I don't know how long they've known about this bubbling up as a story, but it came out of the blue to all of us, didn't it?
Well, you would suspect that if it happened on the 5th of October, that they'll have been notified in some respect that Gigot has behaved inappropriately, to use their turn of phrase, but I suspect that they haven't thought that the punishment would be as severe as it was, given that the test result was negative and that there were witnesses that could exonerate Gigot. Now, if it's his teammates, maybe we almost have to take some of that with, I'm not saying they're liars, but perhaps there's a certain amount of sticking up for Tony Gigot, and that's been something that they're going to have to work their way through as well, because they've backed up their mate. But I suspect that they've known that something was coming, but it would have been a minimal sanction or a slap on the wrist, because what hasn't been implied is that he's done it was the Lee player, Acton? Barlow. He hasn't done a Barlow and threatened to chin anyone, from the sounds of it.
Not from what I've heard, but that it's possible that, threats were made rather than bribes. It's, that some things could be lost in translation or what have you, I don't know, but it's a strange and disappointing story.
It is.
For the sake of the Catalan Dragons and French Rugby League, I hope there's a lack of substance to it in the end.
As do I. And these things do come out in the wash, don't they? So all will be revealed in the fullness of time. So, to a big name signing at Odsall, in one sense at least. Thank you. Look at that. A genuine squeak of delight. Bradford have signed Samoan Rugby Union Sevens player Phoenix Hunapo Nofoa. The Bulls have signed him on a 1-year contract with the option to extend for 2 more years. The 22-year-old was in the junior system at the New Zealand Warriors when he was younger and played for New Zealand at the 2015 Touch Football World Cup. Don't know a tremendous amount about this young man, apart from what I've seen on YouTube, which is a sevens player, so he's not really used to making tackles, and he runs around with a lot of space, given that there's only 14 people on the pitch. So I suspect he's basically another part of cutting our cloth, so we'll see how he gets on. Best of luck to him, though.
Whoa.
What?
Whilst not talking as a firm news item, before we skip off from the Bradford Bulls, are we going to address the widely reported now rumour of old Scotty Moore?
Giving Scotty Moore a run out before he packs down for HMP Wakefield. Yeah, great news. That's tremendous. Listen, if he comes and plays, then fine, because he brings some experience at the 9 position, which we don't have. We've got some good young talented players there in Joe Lum and the lad from Hallis from Leeds who's come to spell him as well. So it would be an improvement on that in terms of his experience. And we've spoken in the past about the potential that's always been there with Scott Moore, albeit unrealised to a certain degree.
Wasted, I would call it, rather than unrealised.
Exactly.
Wasted.
Well, they are. Wasted talent. So if you can bring a percentage of that to the club and be a professional, then fine. Let's see how it goes. This is the world we dwell in. To be honest, if we're going to sign people in the front row, I'd rather they were wearing 10 or 8 than 9 at this point in time. I think we'd be better served with prop forwards and the second rower. But he's a decent quality player for where we are and where we live at the moment. Bring him on board. That's fine. No problem. As long as he behaves. Which remains to be.
I think he's behaved badly enough to not bring him on board.
But if you're going to put someone in charge of him, then let's have a guy like Tubes in charge of him and have it, because it's not like he's not used to dealing with volatile players, is it? So
all players with a bit of an off-field rap.
Exactly. Yeah. So there you go. Maybe that's a good fit for them. Anyway, staying with Bradford's feeder club, Manly Sea Eagles, they have almost negotiated to end the playing careers of Steve Matai and Brett Stewart. Brackets ahead of their moves to Bradford. I doubt it. But they still face a fight to have the duo's wages excluded from the 2017 salary cap. The club have confirmed that they are in talks with the NRL, the Rugby League Players Association, as well as the duo's respective managers on managing their retirement from the game. Both players have ongoing injury problems and have been out of action since the middle of last season.
Yeah, Matai's broken everything, hasn't he?
Yeah. And that's the mark of the player he was, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I think if he... You almost feel like he should have announced his retirement by this point anyway. So this conversation for him is sad that it's come in at the start of a season rather than him going out in any way, shape or form on his own terms for the career he's had. Yeah. For Brett Stewart, I kind of feel like it's trying to get rid of him.
Yeah,
for Manly.
I suspect that.
I think they feel they've got his successor now as an incumbent.
Yeah,
they don't want the burden of a potentially crocked, highly paid player on the books.
I think he might have been told he's retiring rather than.
But certainly both have served the club with distinction.
Of course.
And for them to go out this way on a playing side of things purely is a sad way to end a playing career.
It is. And finally, the government sports minister has praised Rugby League this week for its work in tackling homophobia. At Media, Culture and Sport Questions, All-Party Parliamentary Rugby League Group Chair Greg Mulholland MP asked the Minister to join him in welcoming the leadership shown by Rugby League in tackling homophobia in sport on this, the day that Super League season kicks off. Sports Minister responded by praising Rugby League for all its efforts in making progress on the issue before going on to welcome the start of the Super League season. Parliamentary Rugby League Group Chair and Leeds North West MP Greg Mulholland and Super League pod follower on Twitter expressed pride in the way that Rugby League has tackled the issue of homophobia. Rugby League has shown great leadership in challenging homophobia, including through the very successful Tackle It campaign run by the RFL, he said. The parliamentary group was delighted to host a meeting about this, and we are very proud that Rugby League has led the way in addressing this issue. Homophobia has no place in sport and must be stamped out the same way that racism has been dealt with. Or is being dealt with, I would go so far as to say. We all want LGBT Rugby League people, whether a player at any level, a coach, referee, supporter or volunteer, to feel welcome and valued in the game. We must get to the stage where people's sexuality is not an issue for anyone in sport, and until then, the